Hermine lashing the East Coast. Its high winds and heavy rains damaging homes and businesses in its way. And Jonas, you say that's why massive storms like this can also damage the overall economy.
Well, they can in the long run, because what happens is insured losses go up. And if that pattern continues, as we've seen recently with a lot of storms going on, then it becomes uninhabitable. Essentially, the insurance rates, either they leave the companies or they raise rates so much that people can't live in these areas. Now, we're way off that, but there's certain areas of this country that are going in that direction. It's getting very unaffordable to have insurance in many parts of Florida. So it's been, I think, 10 years since they've had a hit like this, but you don't want to see a permanent change going on. In the short run, it's like free money. You're getting a check from your insurance company. Insurance company sells bonds and stocks to give you that money. It's actually stimulative, but in the long run, it can really damage the whole economy for the whole country because of this problem.
Gary B., generally wrecking stuff is not good.
Exactly. I disagree with Jonas on this. I think there are negative impacts long-term and short-term. On the long-term, the estimates from Katrina, for example, was it cut the GDP growth in half. It was growing about 3.5% before Katrina, about 1.7% after Katrina. In the short term, let's take the example of a person who owns a restaurant. He owns a restaurant, it's worth $500,000. He gets a check to rebuild the restaurant for $500,000. That's the Jonas point. That's all well and good. Unfortunately, the customers stop coming to the restaurant because it's not there. So that person that owns the restaurant has a total decrease in revenue. That's the problem. People stop going to movies, they stop taking Uber, all that stuff, and that money doesn't come back. So in some cities like New Orleans, maybe we're going to see from the latest in the coast of Florida there, a lot of that revenue and potential profit is gone forever. And the long-term impact, whether it's a tornado or hurricane, has always now studies shown to be negative to the economy.
Because this is a holiday weekend, Gina, this business is lost for good.
Yeah, a lot of it is. I was in Alabama when the horrible tornadoes took place that killed more than 100. And I can tell you that people think that FEMA goes in and takes care and fixes all these problems, but they're very, very expensive, yes, but also very slow and in some ways ineffective. And counter to most of the things that the federal government involves itself in. This is one place where they really are supposed to be, but perhaps some strategic planning would be in order to predict these sorts of disasters and think a little bit more effectively about how that money can be spent on time and below budget, because it is very expensive.
John, the impact on the economy here, an economy that's barely growing in the second quarter.
Yeah, and the impact is going to be negative. Look, very smart people like Jonas and Gary B have discussed this and come on different sides of the issue for some time. That's why the Atlantic published a research report on this that covered 6,712 cyclones, typhoons, and hurricanes from 1950 to 2008 to measure the impact. And what they came up with was that Gary B was right, that it always has a negative effect on the economy. Now, a smaller type hurricane or cyclone will have an effect of, say, a currency crisis, but a bigger one like a Katrina will have the effect. They paralleled it to, say, a systemic financial failure, which is exactly what you saw in New Orleans, the same type of economic destruction. So long term, this is going to be very bad. Not very bad. It's going to be somewhere from bad to very bad to the economy.
Danielle, what do you say?
I agree. It's taken New Orleans 10 years to get back to the same number of hotel rooms as it did pre-Katrina. 10 years is a very long time in a city like that relies so much on tourism. This is it's a holiday weekend. We saw from Sandy, New Jersey lost $950 million in tourist revenue. New York City lost $1.2 billion. This is not what Florida needs at this time.
Jonas, I'm going to give you the final word.
I'm not in disagreement with the long-term point here, and it's not good to have bad weather, but again, if you think about where the money comes from for these checks, it's either taxpayer money or it's insurance portfolios being liquidated. And yes, people can't go to these particular places, but that money, is, I think Gary said in other shows, gets spent somewhere else. There's new spending in the form of rebuilding from insurance money. Again, I'm not saying it's a positive, particularly with a really bad situation like Katrina, but an ordinary storm that leads to insurance settlement and losses can be short-term stimulative, but is bad long-term.
Thank you, guys.